So today we are here with Amanda, Amanda Price, and you are a health and wellness coach, would you say? Is that the best way to describe it?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I describe myself as a health coach. I also have a relatively recent background as a personal trainer,
Okay.
and it was the personal training and nutrition coaching that I was doing that sort of led me into health coaching, because health coaching was a looked at the whole holistic, took the whole holistic view of health, and I just was finding my sort of midlife clients needed a bit more than just being, exercise is of course really important, but they just needed a bit more than that, and a bit of nutrition coaching. So
And
that's
how did you? What was
partly
the? How
why
did you?
I ended up.
Sorry. Yeah. And what was the? How did you kind of get into the work in the first place? What's your kind of background? Where are you kind of from, as it were?
Well, if you go back to the beginning, I actually started out in finance, in private banking,
Right.
um, and then children and moves abroad came along, um, and I ended up actually teaching English as a foreign language,
Right.
and that's when I actually learned that I quite like working either one to one with people in that sort of coaching stroke training sort of arena, or in small groups, and I really enjoyed that. Not so much the big groups. um, but then when we moved back to the UK, back in around 2011, um, I continued teaching, but I discovered Nordic walking, and there were a lot of other things going on with my health and the health of various family members,
Hmm.
um, that I became increasingly interested about how we can support ourselves and not rely upon, I don't know, the NHS. So I started to learn that, our health is our own responsibility to a large extent. And the Nordic walking I did then led me to complete my personal training certification. And then, as I say, we then moved abroad again, and that's when I've discovered health coaching, a few years later.
Okay.
So it's been a journey, and I would say it's a sort of been a combination of sort of where I've found myself in life, but also the influences of, my brother being very sick and learning a lot about how nutrition can support health, and also my mother's Alzheimer's diagnosis, and just going on that sort of brain health journey. And back then, when my mum was first diagnosed, nobody knew that you know we could support our brain health,
Right.
with lifestyle. And I hadn't heard of Dr. Dale Bredesen and people who are working in that field, and now they're saying that many cases of Alzheimer's are preventable, and mild cognitive decline, and maybe further down the road. I mean, there are examples of people who are following a protocol and coming back from what appears to be an Alzheimer's diagnosis, and coming back and having a fulfilling life.
Oh,
I
really?
think
So
that's
not just slowing the process, actually reversing it in some way.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
And that's a combination of kind of mental health and physical health
yeah.
therapies. Yeah.
Yeah, so the program, that I'm studying at the moment is, it's called RECODE, which stands for Reverse Cognitive Decline, and this is run by, Dr. Dale Bredesen's company, Apollo Health. Um, yeah, and I mean, it's more than just sort of what you eat and how much exercise. You were looking at, well, things like toxins, which I mentioned as well.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so it's a very individualized. The protocol itself is very individualized, but that's the way, healthcare is moving. Um, it's becoming very individualized, and yeah, and mental health, you know, is a big part of that as well. I think the whole understanding between, I mean, if you go back many years to other, Chinese medicine or whatever, everybody understood that the link between physical health and mental health was there,
Hmm.
and therefore brain health. But we kind of lost it somewhere along the way, and now I think we're coming back to understand that there's this big link between between mental health, physical health, brain health.
And do you find that's an easy kind of concept to get across to your clients? Do you think the kind of that link between the two, or do people are kind of they're slightly wary of it?
I think there's so much more now in the press. And if you look at the menopause thing as well, I mean, a lot of the focus has been on, poor mental health in menopause, and why is that, and how can we support it? And a lot of it comes back to lifestyle, or it may be just the hormones, but it can, like, lifestyle changes can also help.
So what kind of I mean, there's probably a very wide variety. What kind of people are coming to you, and what kind of things are they coming to you with?
Yeah, well, it's changed a little bit. So, a couple of years ago, I was very focused on prevention of chronic disease. So I was helping people with stress, weight loss, reducing their risk of things like type 2 diabetes, things that are a little bit more real. And I still have a problem now about getting people to think about their brain health, and protecting it. But my argument is that if you reduce your risk of heart disease and type 2 diabetes, then you're protecting your brain health as well. So I was very much working in that area, and now I've started this Recode course. I want to sort of shift it more into just brain health, and then eventually working with people who are showing signs of cognitive decline.
Okay. So it's not just people who are kind of suffering from stress and depression, and it's affecting their physical well-being.
Yeah, I bet it, because I mean, stress is a massive risk factor. Chronic stress is a risk factor for cognitive decline. So, you've got stress is a risk factor for high blood pressure, for example. High blood pressure, in turn, is a risk factor for brain health.
And have you noticed there's a kind of a change in the type of people that are coming to you over the last few years? Are people becoming more aware of kind of mental health issues and the link?
Yeah, I think. Well, I do think people are becoming more aware, and making the link between maybe their mental health and their physical health. And I wouldn't say it's necessarily changed the sort of people I speak to, because I'm still sort of looking at that, mainly sort of female, sort of 50s, around that sort of age group.
Yeah.
On the basis that how you look after yourself at that time of life is going to determine how well you are when you're, in 15, 20 years time.
Right. Okay. So that's kind of the predominance of the kind of the clients that you're seeing, is that kind of thing. Okay. That's interesting. Okay. No, it's very interesting. I mean, because I've talked to other people, and they have talked about the link between kind of efficiency and mental health. So it's quite interesting to talk to someone in terms of the physical well-being and mental health, and just how all these things kind of integrate together.
Yeah. I mean, there's been lots of studies, around mental health, and how some fairly simple lifestyle changes. I mean, it's not going to be beneficial for everybody, but for a lot of people, just changing up their diet makes a big difference. Doing some exercise that you enjoy, and it can just be, as a health coach, I'm into behavior change, so it's doing small things. It's not about a complete overhaul and trying to do it in 2 weeks. It's about looking at the low-hanging fruit, picking something that you can do, keeping it really small, because then if you achieve that, then you get the knock-on effect.
Yeah. And do you get a lot of people coming in and saying, I'm not feeling well, I'm not feeling great, I want to run a marathon in 2 months' time, and thinking that's somehow going to make them feel better?
Yeah, well, sometimes you get people who are a little bit more, perhaps not that extreme, but
Mm.
do expect a sort of a miracle,
Right.
um, and it doesn't work like that. If you're looking to lose weight, for example, I always say, well, you didn't put this weight on in 2 months. It's probably been accumulating over a period of at least a decade or whatever. So you're not going to lose it, in 2 weeks or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's yeah. So sometimes you sort of have to sort of moderate expectations. And at the end of the day, I'm a coach, so I don't give out you know meal plans. That's not what a coach does. It's coaching around lifestyle change and supporting, empowering, in providing that sort of accountability. So
Okay.
providing information is just one part of it. It's getting the client to set their own goals that they can achieve. They're not trying to achieve my goals for them.
Right.
They're achieving their own goals.
So it's very kind of non-directive, like kind of traditional life coaching, as it were.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's. I mean, there is a comparison. I mean, there is an overlap between sort of life coaching and health coaching because um, there are aspects of life coaching which deal maybe with sort of emotional and mental health, and how's your home life or whatever impacting your stress levels, and it all comes into kind of life coaching and health coaching. So there is a bit of an overlap there.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Oh, that's brilliant. Well, that's very interesting. Thank you very much. So, I mean, the only other question I wanted to ask you was, because it's quite a journey to go from private finance to health coach. But if you were,
It was a long time ago though,
yes,
Kevin.
a long journey, but quite a journey.
Yeah, I mean,
What did
in many ways, I was the typical sort of I don't particularly like this expression, but trailing spouse. When my third child came along, I gave up work. And my husband, we had the opportunity to move abroad the first time, so we took it. And then, 5 years down the road, I thought, well, now I need to start getting back out into the workplace, doing something for me. And that led me into teaching English as a foreign language, and I sort of went from there, really.
so? I mean, do you think? I mean, it sounds like you're doing what you kind of love doing, but do you think, knowing what you know now and what you've learned through your journey, is there anything? If you weren't doing that, is there something else that you would like to be doing?
Mm. Well, I'm quite into. I mean, I like food. I'm a real foodie, and I like wine. I don't drink anywhere near as much as I used to. Now I've learnt, but I still enjoy a glass of wine. I guess if you'd asked me that question 10 years ago, I probably would have said, "Oh, maybe I'd be working in the wine industry or something if life had turned out differently." Um, yeah, I don't know. I think I probably would have ended up somewhere doing something foodie or along those lines.
Okay, but it's all basically tied together, though, isn't it? At the end of the
Yeah,
day.
it
Yeah.
does. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, that's brilliant. Thank you very much for your time. That's fascinating. That's really, really useful. I think people will find that very useful and very interesting to kind of get a handle on that kind of area that you're working in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's different from. I mean, from working. I imagine if you're a counsellor working in mental health, then it's different. I
Yeah.
did do recently. I've done a course called Trauma Sense, which makes me a sort of a trauma informed coach, which can be really useful. Um, I did a year with I had a 1 year contract with my local borough council as a health and wellness advisor, and I was working a lot with people from, I suppose, more socially deprived areas. And I wish I'd done this course before I started that job,
Right.
because I was quite clearly dealing with people who had experienced trauma in some shape or form, and although I was sort of conscious of it, I didn't really know what to do, where to go with it, or what to do with it.
Right. Okay.
And so, although I'm not, I'm not a counsellor or therapist, but just being aware and learning to recognize when somebody's exhibiting signs of trauma, then and how it impacts their behavior, and that can be, I think it's going to be really useful.
Yeah, no, definitely, absolutely. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much.